What's up, Passionate DJs, and welcome to episode 219 of the Passionate DJ Podcast. I'm, of course, your host, David Michael, and today we're talking to the fellas from the Cryztal Grid project, which, as you know, we've been following for a couple of years now. They are an electronic band. They started here in Ohio, they moved to Colorado, and they've been working full steam for a couple of years now on this project, making really great music, putting together really great sets. And, of course, they had a little bit of a slowdown, as a lot of people did with the whole COVID thing last year, because a strong element of the Cryztal Grid project is the live set. And so what we wanted to do is catch up with the guys and see what they've really done with that time. And it turns out the answer to that question is quite a bit. So we're going to be catching up with them in just a moment. Now, firstly, I just want to apologize for the delay in this week's episode. I know it's been a little while. I actually had a catastrophic hard drive failure, which really slowed me down. So I apologize for the delay. I hope to be getting back into the swing of things here in the next week or two. But one thing that we have not slowed down on is our live sets, our live streams. We've been going hard on Twitch, so make sure you check us out over there at twitch.tv/passionatedj. I think we've had 3 streams there in the last 4 or 5 days. So we've been staying pretty busy over there. We've had Ike B, we had Mr. Shifter, we had Mo Dingo not too long ago, and we also had Xander come in and do an hour set of all originals. So we've been staying really busy over there. But for today, we're going to focus on going beyond the grid. In other words, what have the Cryztal Grid guys been doing with this time? The first thing we're going to talk about is Cody's side project, which is called Summit 1, and it's based around the idea of lo-fi hip-hop beats. And of course, he's taking these lo-fi sounds and combining it with his amazing saxophone playing. He's built a podcast, and I think he's selling some samples around it as well. This is called Chilled Samples, which you should also check out. Gerrad has 2 music side projects going on as well. One is called Cloud Effect, which is ambient music. Very relaxing, very soothing stuff. And then there's also a project called Celestial Intentions, which is based around the concept of binaural beats. So we're going to dive into that and figure out what are binaural beats, what's the point of that. It's a really interesting thing. We'll share just a brief clip of it. Now, there's one more thing that we're going to talk about today. I'm going to mention it here briefly at the start of the show, and that's the Red Rocks Riddim and Dubstep Drums sound pack. This is a really cool project that the guys worked on. It's basically a sound pack, obviously, for people who make dubstep and Riddim and, similar styles of music, but they actually created this sound pack based around sounds they recorded at Red Rocks. If you're not familiar, we're going to talk all about it. We're going to talk about how they recorded these sounds and kind of the approach and the psychology behind how they put the sound pack together. You should definitely check it out. Head over to coloradosounds.com and check out the demo. If you aren't already aware, Cryztal Grid made our intro music, so you're hearing them right now. So if you like our intro music, you'll definitely like what Summit 1, Celestial Intentions, and Cloud Effect have to bring to the table. So check all those out. You can find those all on Spotify. All right, with that being said, let's get over to the guys from Cryztal Grid and talk about going beyond the grid. Before we jump too far in, I just now realized that the video wasn't recording, so I'm going to give that little brief intro one more time. Sorry about that.
Perfect, baby, perfect.
So we're here with the fellas from Cryztal Grid, our buddies from Colorado, in Colorado, who, we've been following their story as an electronic band slash DJ, saxophone, drum duo for a couple years now, and, these guys are hustlers. They make great music, and we love really keeping up with what they've got going on. And so we asked Cody and Gerrad to come on and kind of share what's been going on with them in the last year or so, what they've done with their time during the pandemic and all that, because like I said a minute ago, we've asked that question of a lot of people, but we know that the Cryztal Grid guys have at least a couple of answers to that, because I just know that you guys have a lot of side projects that you're working on. I don't know how much of it relates to Cryztal Grid. I know a lot of stuff as you guys have branched out into some other sounds and things that you're working on and recordings, and so I think it would be a great time to just, talk to you guys about what you've got going on. So sorry for the repeat intro, but that's my bad for missing the record button.
not an issue at all. And like I said earlier, I think this is an opportunity to tie a bow on the craziness of this past year, because the last time we all were hanging out was late February of 2020, right before the pandemic hit. The world turned upside down and everything within our industry changed. So this is it's a solid opportunity for us, one, to tell the story, two, to even reflect on everything we have done in the past year, because as we're there's light at the end of the tunnel. But as I was reviewing my journal from the past year, like those first couple of months, like nobody had any idea of what was going on, and it was just so strange. And I feel like the strangeness is almost normalized at this point. So it was fun to revisit and be like, oh shit, we took a lot of risks, and we experimented with a lot of different projects and growing opportunities, and it's been a hell of a year.
So before we talk too much about how you branched out, I guess, what is the status of the Cryztal Grid project? Because I know that you guys were working on like when you came here, we never really published it because you didn't have all your gear here. But you guys played a set here kind of for me and Tony in the studio, and it was like you're supposed to be your like 2020 live performance. So did that kind of get back burner? Did you make any tweaks to that? Or is that, what's the status of that project, whether it's both from your live performance perspective, but also are there any originals in the works and all that?
Yeah, so currently, as far as Cryztal Grid goes, we are actively writing new music.
Okay.
We're just kind of in the experimentation phase again, like getting our chops back and getting into the writing phase again. And then I think closer towards the end of the year, we're going to start looking at trying to play a show here in Denver. I think nice. that would be, at least by that point, hopefully some things might open up and we might make some new connections and see what we can do here, and play a small club or whatever, just get in front of some people again. So I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, and so chronologically, so we played those two shows in Dayton and then Cincinnati late February 2020. That's when we were able to all kick it. And our initial plan at that point was to utilize those shows in Ohio in front of our fan base to test out a new set that we had developed and we had practiced. And of course it went just how we were planning. We figured out a small few tweaks that we wanted to create, but overall we were extremely happy with that 2020 set. We had all the intention in the world to come back to Denver late March, early April, and start playing some shows here. And then I think around like March 15th, March 16th, everything shut down.
Yep.
And that's where we began to make our creative pivots to, one, explore our creativity, but two, just to see what else is possible as we're pursuing this mission to becoming full-time musicians.
And so for those who are listening who may not be as familiar, the Cryztal Grid project is, it's made up of you two guys, but there's saxophone, there's drums, there's a DJ kind of backdrop that's like maybe the structure of the set, and then there's vocals that like mic work. And so the Cryztal Grid project seems, from me looking in and just from talking to you guys about it, is like a very live performance driven project, right? And so that this is just about the worst kind of thing that can happen to a project like that, from like from your normal workflow and perspective on how you make music and how you perform it.
Absolutely.
It had to be extremely frustrating and confusing. Like, what do we even do with this?
And we had those conversations, and we sat down, and that kind of segues into what our plan was moving forward, because we knew our project is live show based. Like that's how we're going to grow this thing, and that was no longer an option. And like Cody said, there was no light at the end of the tunnel. We had no idea how long the world was going to be shut down and how, what the aftermath of this pandemic was going to be. So we decided that kind of the theme of the year for 2020 was diversify. We had all of our eggs in one basket, and it got, turned over and our eggs broke. So we started to brainstorm, like, what else could we do, and how could we still create music and then still work towards becoming full-time musicians. And man, we brainstormed for a while, and we came up with a few ideas, and some of those ideas are still happening today, and others we kind of nixed. But so why don't you talk about, because you got affected by the most, as far as your job, and then that led you into the creation of your Project Summit One.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I had the opportunity to not work in my full-time job for probably like 5 to 6 weeks, and then for another month after that, I returned on like a 5-hour a day basis in comparison to a typical 9-hour day. And that allowed me to, one, focus on my personal growth, my health, fitness, nutrition, plus write music literally all day long. Like that time period where I didn't have an obligation to work at a full-time gig and to only work on things that I wanted to work on was, it was like my dream was actualized. So one, that inspired me to hustle even harder to try and make being a full-time musician possible. But in regards to Summit One, so Summit One is my like lo-fi and chill hop project. So that's just chill instrumental beats that are jazz based in nature. And early in 2020, I'd become extremely interested in the genre. And I remember even when we were driving out to Ohio to play those shows, I had Gerrad listen to a few albums as we were driving out there. I was like, this is really interesting music. It's in a weird time in its growth as far as global growth with all of the streaming platforms and growth in popularity. And musically, it allowed me to express a very chill side of music while being saxophone centric. And so I think that was the first artistic project that I worked on when the pandemic hit and the lockdown hit. I just created a ton of lo-fi and chill hop tracks and offered saxophone stems to some of the top artists within the scene. And I launched that project in June of 2020, and it's over the past 4 to 5 months, it has consistently floated between like 375,000 to 400,000 monthly listeners. So that was
that's insane, both insane and unfair.
Yeah, so there was definitely a strategy behind it. So when I first entered the scene, I compiled contact information for many of the top artists within the scene. So one of the parameters was just they had to have over 100,000 monthly listeners, and I had to record their music. And then I took that list, reached out to 100 of them, offered saxophone stems. I probably collabed with 15 of those individuals. And so I was releasing with some of the major labels within the lo-fi scene without even having a project, which was kind of a fun feeling to have, because eventually enough of these label reps are like, who is this dude? Like, who is this guy? So there was definitely strategy to the growth. And it was just a successful artistic endeavor that took off, and it's been a lot of fun. It was super low risk. It was just making chill lo-fi beats and it took off, and it's driving some additional monthly revenue that overall helps us fulfill our dreams.
That's great.
So during that month and a half that Cody had his head down working on lo-fi, I totally had forgotten about this, but I was working on getting better at production, working on my production chops, and actually took Andrew Huang's production course on monthly. So it's like a month-long course that has like 3 sections, and you write 3 tracks. And a lot of it was information that I already knew, but I definitely gained some nuggets out of it. And focusing on production technique and skill while you were doing your thing. And so that's what I was up to during that whole time frame.
So it's easy for us to kind of like gloss over what lo-fi and chill hop and these kind of styles even are. So maybe like, can you put into your best words, like if you're making a lo-fi track, what words do you use to describe the beats that you're making?
Chill instrumental hip hop beats is the best way to describe it. And it's full, at least when I'm writing it. And obviously every artist has their own intention, but for me, it's designed to be chill background music that you can work to. And like study beats is a huge culture, and that's how lo-fi has gained the global prominence that it currently has.
Is there kind of like a maybe it's even an unspoken rule that like the lo-fi implies that there's not a lot of big compressed drum beats and like big audio spectrum sounds, that maybe it's almost a little crunchy or has an AM radio sound, or at least is inspired by that type of sound?
Yeah, totally. It's low fidelity sound, and it's funny because we're emulating the crunchiness and the dustiness that older analog processing gear would give, and now we're digitally recreating that, which is funny, but
recreating the limitation.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what it is. And historically, like it's been around since like the late 80s, early 90s. And then in 2016, 2017, with the rise of Spotify and YouTube's 24/7 playlists, that's when the genre truly grew into what it is today. And I mean, it's unsuspecting music. And just last year, like, it was the second most streamed music globally.
So it's the most popular music that nobody's heard of.
Totally. Yeah. Or maybe everybody's heard of it in passing, or it's in this strange bubble phase of growth, because if there's any other genre that was producing the amount of streams that this genre is currently promoting, like, it'd be all over. But I think given its inherent nature of being just chill instrumental beats, it's just this new online music culture that the world hasn't necessarily seen yet. It's definitely new.
So I want to make sure we give a solid plug to your lo-fi project. So where can the people like check out your music?
Yeah, so that project's name is Summit One. The one is spelled out, and it's available on all streaming platforms.
Find yourself in this involved in this genre of music that's really taking off, but there's not a lot of what do you want to say, gatekeepers. It's almost an underground thing that's kind of gotten ahead of itself, maybe. So you see an opportunity there to maybe try to bring some of these lo-fi artists together, right?
Correct.
So what does that eventually develop into? How did that?
So that developed into my project called Chilled Samples, and Chilled Samples was originally created as a platform for me to sell a sample pack that I worked on all summer. So that's called Mountain Beats Volume 1. So on all of my Colorado mountain hikes and adventures, I would record different Foley and percussive elements, whether it be sounds of like a waterfall on a hike, sounds of a stream, or kicking a log. Gerrad was with me one time. He threw a rock at a log, and that ended up being the foundation to a majority of of the kick drums in that sample pack. But
nice.
So that's how it started, just as a platform for me to sell this unique sample pack. But then, just as you said, there's that clear opportunity of bringing attention to the artists that create lo-fi and chill hop, because yes, it's the second most streamed music globally as of last year, but a lot of these artists that have anywhere from 500,000 to 1 million to 2 million monthly listeners don't have a single interview anywhere online. And so Chilled Samples kind of morphed into a platform that allows these top chill hop and lo-fi artists to be able to share their voice and their perspectives, because what they're doing is impressive.
When it's like US dubstep artists in like 2011. It's right. Like the same thing. There's like, it was a thing and dubstep was everywhere, but you didn't know who anybody was or who was making it. And so I think it takes projects like this to bring that stuff to the fore.
Yeah, well, and I feel like these artists truly deserve to be spoken to, right? I think like we had played a couple shows as Cryztal Grid, and then only a few months later we were chatting with you. You had already given us the opportunity to share our story and discuss what we were doing. And but there's these kids out there all over the world that are reaching millions of listeners on a monthly basis, and nobody's taking the time to talk to them or figure out what they're doing.
Yeah, it's a very creative genre too. I mean, there's a lot there to explore. You know, you hear, okay, low quality hip hop beats, like, okay, why? And you know, you got to realize that it's like building these like soundscapes out of hip hop beats. You know, it's there's a lot to explore there. It's a unique genre.
Yeah, well, and there's a ton of instrumentalists as well, just because this genre caters so well to anybody that plays guitar or plays the horn or any other type of instrument. And it's filled with a lot of just really, really kind and open individuals. There's essentially zero barrier to entry, and everybody's willing to share a conversation. So it's been a true joy to become a part of that community, and not to mention just the global network has grown exponentially.
So can we talk a little bit about what it's like? What's your approach to going out and recording a sample pack or some Foley? Like did you set out to do it one day, like I want to make a nature sample pack, and then you just walk around with a field recorder and look at things that sound interesting? Or did you have like, I'm going to need some bassy things for snares, or for kicks, I'm gonna need some snappy things for snares, and like, how was there any planning that went into the recording process of it?
I wouldn't say there was anything written down on paper, but the notes were definitely there in thought, as far as like what sound can create a transient that can turn into a hi-hat, or what can I eventually turn into a cymbal by throwing enough reverb on it, or what part of this stream, like if I'm looking at a stream, I'm looking at the rocks and the currents, and it's like which one has a prettier sound or a different sound, or what. So I wouldn't say there was intentional strategy. It was just sort of creative thought as I'm on these adventures, being like, what can I capture from an audio perspective? And it was, as far as just a creative lens, I've been climbing I've climbed a lot of mountains, and I've taken a ton of pictures and visually cemented those experiences. But from a musician perspective, it's like, how do I capture that? How do I capture the energy of this adventure through sound? And that's where the sample pack idea started. And I think for a majority of our ideas and creative ventures over the past year, like the inspiration just can't be necessarily pinpointed. Like they're literally just artistic ideas that sort of came out of nowhere.
Well, you guys are in an ideal spot to be inspired by nature over there.
For sure.
I mean, that's
sometimes you're just walking along and you see a big hollow log and you throw a rock against it. Turns into a kick.
Boom, job done. I'm clocking out.
Yeah.
What kind of equipment did you use? Did you have like a basic field recorder with like a mic attached to it, or what all did you bring to a session?
So I just have a Zoom H5 field recorder, and then in my hiking backpack, just a wide array of percussive elements. So taiko sticks, drumsticks, yarn mallets, rubber mallets, like ping pong balls, tennis balls, cymbal brushes.
Okay, that's cool. So
Yeah,
you bring a bin or two of objects and whack things in nature and see what comes out, basically.
essentially. Well, and then that's the easy part. So, and then in order to actually shape those into usable percussive samples, it's
Right.
hours in the studio
You got to
reshaping
make.
them
Yep.
to
You got
make
to.
them actually sound like a usable sample.
Right. Like no dead space at the beginning of the sample. Make sure that it's compressed the right amount, but you don't crunch everything. And yeah, I'm sure that had to be quite intimidating because I mean that's it's tough to put together, like, let's say a drum kit, like an analog drum kit like that, in a studio environment, let alone with a field recorder outside with the wind blowing and whatever, and not really having control of the environment so much, which I'm sure is part of the adventure of it and why it's so
Totally.
cool. But yeah, I mean, just as somebody who's like, I recorded a demo for a band once, like a rock band. And okay, rock isn't exactly easy to mix, but still, it was like miking up all these drums and guitar cabinets and stuff, and even in a controlled room, getting that mix down to sound not like ass was so much work, So I'm sure that was quite the undertaking.
Yeah, it was an undertaking, but it was a ton of fun because it's something that we've never experimented with before. So I think it took our audio engineering capabilities to the next level. And so along those same lines of creating a sample pack strictly out of natural sounds in the Colorado mountains, we also created Red Rock sample pack where we took that same concept, except rather than being in the nature in the wild of Colorado, we're at Red Rocks Amphitheater just outside of Denver, hitting and gathering raw audio samples from the center stage, the front rail, the steps, the actual rocks themselves, and then we turned that into a dubstep pack. So I think that could arguably be determined as even more difficult than the nature.
Yeah, so I want to park on this one a minute because this is such a cool project. So, and I want to make sure that we plug this, like tell them where they can buy it. Let's go ahead and plug that now. Where can people buy this sample pack if they're interested, and what like kind of format is it in?
Yeah, so they can visit coloradosounds.com, and everything they need to see is right there on the front page of the website.
Perfect.
Yeah, so you'll download a compressed file that's just wave files of all of the different percussive elements that we recorded. We broke them down into
like all one shots.
We have loops.
Okay.
We have a lot of one shots, and we're throwing in a bonus bass. Riddim bass is what we're calling it. So if you download that, you get that for free. That's an extra sample pack that you get for free.
Nice.
So these are all drum elements and percussive elements. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Cool.
So this is specific to dubstep and Riddim drums.
Nice.
Yeah.
So can you describe to me, as somebody who's never been, like, what even is Red Rocks in the amphitheater, and like maybe just kind of describe what's it like to stand there by yourselves? Like what would I be looking at if I were standing there like recording with you guys?
Oh yeah, you got this.
So Red Rocks, for me personally, it's where my passion for electronic music was born. So it's a venue in the foothills just west of Denver. The capacity is 9,500 individuals, and the stage is centered in between two gigantic rocks. So if you think of like the Lion King, Pride Rock, yeah, it looks like two Pride Rocks on either side. So the acoustics are absolutely phenomenal. But it's once you experience a live show there, like it's hard to experience a live show anywhere else. It's just it's one of my favorite places on the planet, no doubt. And of course I have that personal relationship to it just because that's where my dream was born, and that's where I attended all of my first electronic shows.
So what is it sonically about that venue that you wanted to capture? Is it like a strong reverb? What is it what character did you
well,
capture?
So there's that natural reverb, but just the essence of the energy of that venue. So if you read interviews of a lot of the top artists within the US based electronic scene, like Red Rocks is their dream. Like like Ghastly, for instance. I remember reading an article way back in the day where he would have Red Rocks as his desktop wallpaper, and there's a lot of artists that just reference like Illenium was inspired by Red Rocks. So similar story. He lived in Denver, he went to shows at Red Rocks, and then boom, he turned into Illenium.
Yeah, I would say that Red Rocks is the Madison Square Garden of like electronic music. It's just the pinnacle of success, and that's our dream. We want to play. We want to play. Well, there's a picture of it sitting right there, about 2 feet from me.
Yeah, and it's so not only are the fans excited to be there, but every single artist that plays is absolutely stoked, and that just adds another element where you can tell that the artist, even if they've been on a world tour, this show's special.
Yeah, it's a special one.
So this is entirely outdoor venue?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you can just, like, you had ready access to it to do this project, like you could just walk up and do it, or did you have to like finagle that or work with somebody?
So during the day, it's actually it's a park that's owned by the city of Denver. So so we would typically go around sunrise. So we'd get there at like 6:30 in the morning, and the only individuals there are either running the stairs or people doing yoga. But like we had the center stage to ourselves to record all of these sounds, and nice. For a majority of the pandemic, it was closed down to the public. And right when it opened up, I believe in late June or early July, that's when we started to sneak in there before tourists or anybody else was really exploring. So we had the whole venue to ourselves, which was magical in itself.
I actually went back a few months later to re-record some craft cymbals, so that was really awkward, like and hitting cymbals. It's like 6:30 in the morning and I'm smacking cymbals and people are like looking at me like, what the hell are you doing? So but yeah, that was a good time.
That's cool. Did you record any video content of that stuff?
Yeah, we have video content.
Mm-hmm. Nice. That's cool. Man, so that sounds really like a lot of fun. That's a fun project. How much content is in like the Red Rocks pack?
I think there's over 264 samples.
Yeah.
Samples and solid.
Sorry, one shots and loops.
Have you guys started using that material in your own work yet?
Yeah, we have. So our last original that we released was just the demo track for this sample pack, and so every single drum sound that was utilized in that demo track is just called Red Rocks Dubstep and Riddim drums.
You can find that on all of our streaming platforms.
Once again, what's the URL for that? I really want to push that because I think that's such a cool project.
That's you're going to find the Red Rocks pack at coloradosounds.com.
coloradosounds.com. And is it just called the Red Rocks pack?
It's Red Rocks Dubstep and Riddim drums.
Dubstep and Riddim drums. Riddim drums, right? All right, cool. Yeah, that's super cool. So, what other projects have Gerrad, didn't you have a side project you were working on? Is that still a thing?
Yeah, I've got a couple going on.
Yeah, tell me about that.
So I'm gonna say, when was it? Late summer. I started 2 ambient and binaural beats projects.
Oh, that's exciting. So, what's the difference?
So yeah,
we'll start there.
Let's get nerdy. All right, so the ambient project is kind of just imagine just meditation music, like super slow, ethereal, and there's not like a beat that you follow along. So that's one project, and that is called Cloud Effect. and the other project is called Celestial Intentions, and that's the binaural beat project. And so let's to describe a binaural beat, basically it's oh man, I'm screwing this up. I haven't had to talk about this in a while.
Yeah, this is perfect opportunity.
So basically what a binaural beat is two different waveform like frequencies that are playing in each one of your ears separately, and they're only a few degrees apart. And what that does is, so imagine like a perfect sine wave, right? Like it doesn't fluctuate, it's constant. And if you adjust that sine wave, say it's at 40 hertz, and then you have another sine wave at 45 hertz, right?
Okay.
Play them
in different ears.
In different ears. You have to be wearing headphones in order to get the effect. What happens is your brain struggles to tell the difference between the two sine waves, and it adds a pulse to the sound. So
Gotcha.
if you were to, like, let's say you're wearing earbuds, right, and you pull one out, it's a constant hum in one ear, you put it back in, and then it's got like a wobble to it.
Gotcha. Okay, so
that's happening within your brain.
I vaguely remember reading about this. So I guess it's probably kind of like the effect you get when you hear like a biplane or something, where you have like two propellers that are really close in speed, and you get that kind of like warbling sound.
Yeah. I would, if there's any producers out there, it kind of resembles an LFO.
Okay.
So it's
almost like you're
modulating pulse.
I was going to say it's almost like you're sending a modulating pulse to it, but instead of affecting the original waveform, you're just hearing them at the same time.
Correct. Yeah.
That's cool.
Absolutely.
So I assume you do that with more than sine waves, right? So is there a lead binaural beat thing happening in every track, and then you build a track around that, or is every element meant to be different in stereo, in left versus right, or how do you approach that? Is my question even making sense?
It makes total sense. And the cool thing about this is everything that you said is possible. There are no rules within this. The only rule is that, well, I mean, we've broken that rule too, but essentially, if you want to create a binaural beat, you have what's called the carrier wave. And that's like the centralized, imagine like the sub bass to a track, right?
Okay.
Or a song rather. And so that carrier wave is the binaural beat. And there are binaural beats that are just the carrier wave itself. And then there are beats that have other ethereal ambient things happening. There are beats that have actual like drums and stuff in them. So you can literally be as creative as you want in this genre. And that's why it's so exciting, is because you can literally make just whatever you want.
But as soon as you take the cans off of your head, you're ruining the effect, correct? Because you're hearing the delayed sound from both stereo signals kind of delayed at the same time, and they're getting jumbled together, and it's just going to sound normal, right?
Yeah, it would essentially just sound like one constant like hum.
Yeah, so you have to isolate your left and right ears by wearing headphones or earbuds or something like that.
Correct. Yeah, which you can sort of hear it in stereo monitors, but it's not. So let's go into the science behind it. Why is this even, like, why do we even do it? So your brain has a bunch of different states that it's in depending on your level of alertness, right? So and I did not study up, so I can't tell you exactly what they are.
That's
but
okay.
For example, like when you first wake up, you're in like, I think it's a theta state, and then there's a alpha and a delta. And so basically what you do is there's certain frequency ranges that align with those brainwave states. So through the binaural beats, you can put yourself into that sort of state. And so like for example, an alpha state is super alert, and that's like when we're having a podcast right now. We're in an alpha state. We're super alert, and we're listening to every word, And so you can listen to a particular binaural beat that is set in the alpha wave to help you study for a test, or just kind of lift your mood up, right? And then if you're trying to go to sleep and you're an insomniac and you're having trouble sleeping, you can listen to the theta brainwave binaural beat that can potentially put you in that sleep state, and or meditation rather, or as well.
With that project, are you creating music to listen to for entertainment, or are you creating tools? Are you creating sonic pills for particular reasons, or are you creating this because you like the way it sounds?
You're crushing the questions, man. So the whole intention behind these projects was medicinal music.
Okay.
It's to create. So we're being creative, making these sounds and making these binaural beats, and putting them out into the world for people to use them as a tool. And that was the whole purpose behind it. I'm struggling to remember where it started, but I think I read in a book somewhere, or maybe Aubrey Marcus' podcast, where he was using binaural beats to help him take a nap in the middle of the day. And so I started experimenting with them and listening to them. And then Cody and I were having a conversation. I think it might have been in like mid-May or something. And I'm like, hey, I've been using these binaural beats and I've been seeing results. And he was like, why can't we make them? And I'm like, you're right.
So what are results? What results were you seeing? I mean, they just affect your mood or energy level? What is it?
Yeah, exactly. It could totally be placebo, at least for me, but there is some science behind it, some research behind it. It's definitely not researched as much as normal things. This is kind of metaphysical. Yeah. But yeah, I was using them personally to kind of recharge myself in the middle of the day. So I would do like a meditation session, pop some headphones in, and kind of get rid of that 2:30 like doldrum, the 2:30. What the hell's that thing called?
And I know what you're talking about.
Slump in the middle of the day.
That's where I go for the afternoon cup of coffee.
Yeah, for sure. So instead of drinking coffee, I would do this little meditation practice and pop me some binaural beats, and I would get a good recharge from it.
Do you treat the two projects separately, the binaural beats and the ambient music? Are these like separate things in your head?
I would say yes, but when I'm going to create them, I usually batch them together, because essentially,
I guess they work together, huh?
They sort of work together. Really, the one project is just missing the carrier wave.
Yeah.
So like essentially, it's very similar music. I have some ideas to kind of take the regular ambient project a little further into some other things that I've been listening to lately that have been helping me stay focused while I'm doing graphic design. But
is this music available yet?
Yes, you can find this on Spotify or any platform. Yeah.
Can you say those names again to make sure we are very clear about where to find it?
Yeah. It's Cloud Effect and Celestial Intentions.
Cloud Effect and Celestial Intentions. Awesome.
Yep.
Man, you guys have been busy. Yeah. Jeez. I feel like I gotta step my game up.
Right. Do you guys find all the stuff that you've learned over this time, the different styles of music, do you think that that's going to bleed over or kind of help create different sounds for Cryztal Grid itself?
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah.
100,000. See the difference in personalities?
Yeah, 1,000,000%.
Yep.
Yeah, well, it's just increased our overall time within Ableton and has just pushed the boundary of the way that we view music creation. I think the most monumental aspect about this year was just our development as artists, and I hope that doesn't sound pretentious, and I guess if it does to somebody out there, I don't care. But we just became so focused on creating art, we didn't necessarily place restrictions on ourselves in regards to the outcome. So before the pandemic, when we're writing a Cryztal Grid track, there's definitely pressure. There's pressure to create a specific sound, to make sure it's at a specific level of quality. Are fans gonna like it? Is this gonna perform well live? And rather than having,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. There's a certain point where the experimentation feels more dangerous.
Yeah, well, and like even with lo-fi beats, like I went in without any rules. I said, I'm just going to make whatever type of music that I want to make. And some of my best performing tracks, I spent like 35 minutes on them for like some of my sax recordings. There's a track that I created with a dude out of Amsterdam that's at like 1.5 million streams, and I think it was the riff that he ended up using was on the first take of saxophone recording. And it because it wasn't results driven. It was like, hey, I'm going to listen to this, I'm going to improv, I'm going to make some music, send it over, and now it's performing extremely well. And with the sample packs, there was no risk. It was like, hey, let's see if we can turn something from nothing for binaural beats and the ambient music. Like there's no risk. We're not selling it as something that a lot of people enjoy, and especially with binaural beats, right, the target market is so small. A majority of people are going to dislike this music, and that's perfect because that's not who we're making that music for. We're making it for somebody that may like binaural beats.
Yeah, it almost sounds like there's a lot of science behind the sounds and stuff, so being able to take that and put it over towards your other styles of music, and using that same science or that same concept to be able to take them in whatever direction you want is pretty cool.
Absolutely. And for me specifically, learning how to shape sounds and engineer sounds and design them into exactly the way that I wanted them to sound was huge for my production quality. Imagine, because like when you're using a sample from say Splice or whatnot, it's normally shaped really well and it's EQ'd and everything, and it's like you can literally just drag it and drop it and maybe change one thing about it. But when you're using the sound of a trash can and turning that into a kick drum and shaping that and making it sound like the actual batter head is hitting the
You're the drummer, bro.
Yeah, dude. No, I'm not with hey, the drum.
Why are you looking at us?
Yeah, I don't know. Somebody help me. But yeah, trying to figure those transients out, and then having the long tail of the sub of the kick follow through, and how thinking about how can I make that happen, because my sound that I have right now is not doing it. And
did you find that you had like a certain point where you're like, if I affect this sample too much, then it's not fitting the spirit of the project? You know what I mean? Like if I apply 20 pedal effects to this kick drum, what am I even doing? Or were you able to get it pretty close on that first recording, and you just needed to like tweak it in, if that makes sense?
I'd say we went both ends of the spectrum.
Really? So you weren't afraid to get kind of crazy with affecting them?
As long as the source material was true to our cause, right?
It was dubstep. It can sound like anything, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, like it can be, if you're like, oh, just make it crunchier. Okay, now make it more crunchier. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're still good.
And taking some of the sounds you've already made and reversing them and compressing the hell out of those things. And then I'm thinking of a snare drum where I took a kick that we had already made, and imagine just like cutting out all of the low end, and then like we had a bag of coins that was dropped like on stage, and then you take that bag of coins and it's got like that crispy crunchy sound, and then you mold those two together so you have like the transient of the click and of the drum head, right, the beater, and then, and then you combine those together and you glue them together and they create a snare drum. You add a little flicker of reverb, and then the next thing you know, it's like, holy shit, that sounds good. Like that's legit.
Nice. That sounds like a lot of fun, man. That has to be really rewarding too, like to go from here's a microphone to here's a demo track that we made out of entire sounds that we manifested from nature, out of whole cloth, just like one day. Like that's pretty cool to be able to just take those and turn them into something. That kind of collage is art on its own, Yeah.
Well, and I think it was rewarding, but it had to happen. Like once the artistic idea once we talked about it, then we had to see if it was possible. And so I think a monument, probably the most monumental piece of work that we read over the past year was The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, and that just completely molded our perspective on how to live your life as an artist. And I think in its most simplified version, it's just ensuring that you're putting in the time to make art. And so once we took away our restraints on what type of art we could make and just focused on making art, having a creative idea and then seeing if we can bring it to fruition, it was artistically freeing and creatively challenging. But I think it's taken our artistry and just ability to create to a level that we've never experienced before.
Nice.
That's amazing. At the start of, I guess maybe almost exactly a year ago. So like as the pandemic was really picking up and we all were hearing coronavirus for the first time and all that, like I remember distinctly thinking like, weirdly, I can't wait to talk to Cryztal Grid after all this because I know they're going to do something with this time. Like that was just, it popped in my head as an independent thought. Like Cody and Gerrad are going to do cool stuff with this time, because if you lock them in a box and say, here's a trash can and a micro cassette and a pencil, they're going to come up with some amazing projects somehow out of that. And that's just something that we always respect about you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we appreciate that for sure. Thank you.
I noticed on Instagram, I think it was today, I think you guys are writing new music as Cryztal Grid. Gerrad, with your production skills that you've learned, the way you guys, started back again writing Cryztal Grid music, has it changed the way that you guys have went about it in the studio? Like who's writing, who's doing, are you doing different things now?
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely, stepped up my game.
Yeah, because we've had some conversations and
yeah.
without, I don't want to put too much out, but you wanted to kind of step your production game up to Cody, and you felt like yours was there, but you felt like you needed to step more up. And do you feel like that production course helped you out? And now how's the writing coming along?
Definitely motivating. And what you saw on that Instagram post was what I had started. So, and I've passed that. So we're actually experimenting with a new production kind of technique or style where we're going to weekly switch back and forth some kind of writing project. And last week was my week. And I started a doodle, and I've handed that over to Cody, and now it's his turn to experiment with that. But historically speaking, when we started Cryztal Grid, which was August of 2017, I had just started learning production. So, and the way we kind of structured our project was we were going to focus on our strengths. So I'm super technical, and I kind of see Ableton as, imagine it like Photoshop for me, like just adding layers and doing different things. And that's kind of how my brain works. So naturally moving from like graphic design and that whole technical realm, it was really easy for me to pick up Ableton in the technical side. So I focused all of my time learning, like the first couple years, I was just learning how to be an audio engineer to elevate our tracks, because Cody could write, but we saw a gap in the mixing and audio engineer realm. So that's what I focused on, and I got the whole YouTube University for a couple years, and
you already had a kind of an understanding going in too of like the basic song structure and things like that because of the DJing and drumming and all that too. So you had a huge head start as far as like you didn't have to learn how to count beats or what a measure was or any of that kind of stuff.
Sure, yeah, and absolutely. And I mean, not to blow my own head up, but I pick things up pretty quickly.
Apparently, yeah.
But yeah, so fast forward, all of last year and kind of even like the middle of 2019, I was continuing to step my game up in the actual music writing production realm, and it got to the point where I was maybe putting 25 to 35% into the final product of the music that we were releasing. And now moving into this year and the new music that we're writing, I plan on trying to make it 50-50 as much as possible. So yeah, you've got like four more years of production on me?
2.5.
Okay, 2.5. So,
which is still a lot.
Yeah,
totally. I like the switching of roles thing though. That's a cool approach, because then you're kind of like not throwing each other under the bus per se, but you're kind of forcing each other to, like, there's a push and pull with that. I think that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And this, like, we're constantly experimenting, us, and we'll see how this goes. I imagine it's going to be, we're definitely, like, the music is going to take a different direction, but in a good way, I would say. So you'll definitely hear some shift in kind of like what we've been writing in the past compared to what we'll produce in the future, which I feel like that's just a natural progression of things anyway.
Well, I was going to say, is that intentional? Like, are there stylistic changes that you're making to Cryztal Grid's sound on purpose, or are you just saying that that's going to be a natural result of you changing your methods?
Yeah, I think it'll be a natural result of this.
Still within future bass, or you guys plan to go?
So we're calling ourselves melodic bass. Okay. So that covers a pretty wide swath of genres. Sure, so that'll be future bass, kind of pretty creamy sounds.
It's going to be electronic music.
Super heavy.
I get melodic.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yep, we get it. We get it and we dig it. We're gonna. I'll leave the floor open for a few minutes if there's anything else that you guys want to talk about. The only other question that I have is, when can we get you two in the studio to do like a live something or other?
As soon as possible.
Yeah, let's do that. I don't know when you guys are going to be around, but holler at your boy.
We will.
We'd love to do it, the proper way, like kind of like we experimented with when you guys were actually here in studio, but with the full kit. And we'll have Mo Dingo come out with his fancy camera and get some cool shots and get a live stream going with a chat and all that kind of stuff. Yes. If we could plan
make
that
sure we have
sometime this year or whatever, that would be awesome.
And Tony will be on lock with the Instagram filters and
that's right.
That's the only one that I ever use, but I already got you also.
I've cried because of that video multiple times.
Now you know why I was crying that night.
Content.
It was amazing.
Anything else you want to share? Any other projects you're working on? Anything else you want to plug before we wrap this one up?
I think it's important to note that in the past year, we both ran marathons, which is so on top of the music.
Why not? Just sprinkle that in.
we ran a couple marathons, had some pretty good paces too, so we were happy with that.
Climbing some big mountains.
Solid 6 months of training there.
I also got a master's degree in it.
That was a couple years ago.
Yeah. I climbed 3 14ers last year, I think. So that was a good time.
Yeah, I think I got 5 14ers, but I think 15 peaks above 12,000 feet.
What is a 14er?
A 14,000 foot mountain.
Oh. Hey.
Oh, man. Yeah. We don't even understand the language over here. What's 14er?
Yeah. So it was a good, busy, crazy year.
Yep.
Sounds like it.
That's awesome, and we're glad to see that you guys are making the best of it. We're going to keep a close eye on all these projects as we always do, and up to and excluding, and not the least of which is Cryztal Grid. So we're looking forward to see what happens with that. Once again, give all the follows to these guys. Let's run through them again. Chilled Samples, Summit One, right? What are the two projects? The binaural beats is
that one's Celestial Intentions.
Celestial Intentions and
Cloud Effect.
Cloud Effect.
Yep.
We've got all those, and then the sample packs are once more. The URL for the sample packs
is coloradosounds.com.
coloradosounds.com. Go check it out. It's Cody and Gerrad from Cryztal Grid. Fellas, thank you so much for joining us today on the Passionate DJ podcast. And for everybody listening at home, once again, keep on spinning.